a survey of ancient nations and ancient religions. And we looked at those from the perspective of Jeremiah, who said that contemporary nations of his day really had no light in them, that Israel was set apart. She was set apart as far as her government was concerned, as far as her religion was concerned. She really was a people that had different ideas and different philosophies than the contemporary nations of the day. And we saw that there were some very similar religious ideas that contemporary nations had. And these are very controversial, though often difficult to talk about because sometimes it does go against the mainstream. But you find that there's a lot of sobriety, a lot of accountability that enables us to achieve and to succeed in so many ways because we are given the proper tools for success. So in this chapter, and Martin mentions the Nephil. And yes, my theory on the Nephil is different than what a lot of people have mentioned in the past. The fact that it's not this superstitious or something where you have beings coming from outer space and all of a sudden copulating with humans. It's a very different take than what is traditionally the approach originally taken. But what I found when I went to ancient text, and that they were actually mentioned, and that Israel was not alone in this use and this reference to these this race, if you want to call it a race, or this group of people, and that when you see that there are it's mentioned in contemporary sources, that really brings some reality to it. Race that was developed by whatever means the ancients did it, that were so strong, it enabled them to oppress people and to oppress them unfairly, and the indigent, the poor, really had no ability to withstand that power. So God wiped it out so that we could begin and again. Now, Chloe asks a question, and the question is, I am wondering whether the Nephilim were really responsible for the megalithic structures in the world. That's a very interesting question. I've seen different Discovery Channel documentaries, some legitimate, some way out there, present a whole host of scenarios. And I don't think we really have, anything that is substantial that we can say existed prior to the flood, simply because we don't have that evidence. And there really isn't anything archaeologically that backs it up at this point. Betty says, how many races or people were not killed at the flood? I always believed all were killed. Betty, what I present in my book is that they were all killed, but through the wives of Noah's sons. So you had Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And or Chaim actually is the way Ham is pronounced in Hebrew. But when they married, they would have married natives of the land. And that we find that Cain's descendants bore this genetic malady that increased structure, increased height. And they became, Nephilim or Rephaim. They had various names. But when Ham married, and it is, this is a theory. This is something that we extrapolate from the text, or at least that I do. It's not something that is written in the text. But it is something that you see where everybody was wiped out. So then this is the question that I posed, and as I was studying the material, I was posed with, how do you have this group of people who are destroyed in the flood, but then they reappear again after the flood? And the conclusion that, and again, this was just kind of induction from the evidence that we're giving, was that Ham had to have married probably Naamah. the last descendant of Canaan, who, not Canaan, but of Cain. The father there would have been Lamech, would have been her father's name. And when they married, she bore that genetic trait that increased stature, and that and gave people the strength. And you find that it is very possible that Nimrod was a descendant of this race. So you have Nimrod, and you have all these races beginning to develop again after the flood that were there prior to the flood. And the only way that scripture really allows for, the only conclusion that you can really draw is that Ham would have married Namah, and when they bore children, that then those races continued again by either some sort of dominant or recessive gene. All right, Kim says, I got in by clicking on the line below. The comment bar had me sign into YouTube, then create my own channel. Oh, that's weird that you had to create your own channel, because you shouldn't. I shouldn't have to do that. I'm going to have to go again to the specifications, and I will talk with Ross and Dave this week to see how we can modify that. So we talked about the Nephilim, and we talked about Cush, Ham's son being a mighty hunter, or begetting Nimrod, who is the mighty hunter. And one thing that I found it very interesting when you go back to the Hebrew is that it talks about Nimrod being a Gabor hunter, and Gabor is one of the words that is used for this group of people that really have this increased ability and agility and strength. And you find this idea almost that he began to hunt and to kill the other members of his race, perhaps for fear that another flood would be sent on the earth, or that there would be some other destruction. So I found that when you go back to the Hebrew, a very interesting possibility. Not that it's the only possibility, but it is certainly one possibility that is definitely right there in the text when you read through all the scenarios. So as we go through, we find that these giants, and it's very interesting with the Hebrew, because the word for giants, the word for Gabor, really kind of evolves over time. You find its strict definition in the Genesis time period, in the Abrahamic time period, and then even on through, say, the early Exodus and Judges era. It really retained this idea of increased stature and a very physical correspondence to the term, where it meant something of a person with greater strength. But as you go on then through Israel's history, you find, and once the Goliath household is no more, once their household has passed on, and there are no more Gibors, there are no more giants on the land, you find that the term kind of evolves into this idea of a person of renown, of this incredible respect or fame. So it's really interesting to see, not just in any nation, or rather in any society, how terms, what may mean one thing in one generation, a few generations later means something else. So in this case, we can watch that that terminology evolve over the course of Israel's history, which I find absolutely fascinating. Then as we move on, if you guys, I'm heading on now to about page 57. And please, if I have skipped anything, if you guys want to make any comments, if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, please jump in. I mean, I hope all of you guys will come away with something that, clarifies things, or allows you to say, oh, okay, that's, gives it a new clarity or a new perspective. So as we go into page 57, we find that concepts of the Trinity. And hi, Mark. So nice to have you with us. So as we get into the concepts of the Trinity, I was really faced when I went through the entire Tanakh, both the Torah, the words of the prophets, everything with how, if I were God and I wanted my people to know who I was, to understand who I was, not just now in this generation that I'm actually actively working with them, but if I wanted them to know me hundreds, thousands of years down the road, what legacy would I give to them? What words of enlightenment would I entrench, or what treasure would I bury for them to know me? And as I went through the text, I really discovered this very monotheistic idea of God. Monotheistic even more so than what most religions give God credit for. And, I quote, and I'm just going to quote some of these texts. I know all of you guys are probably familiar with them, but it never hurts to hear these texts again. In Deuteronomy 6:4, it says, "Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our God, Yahweh is one." And of course, the Hebrew there is echad. It says, "Understand that I," and again, this is I singular, "am He. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me." That one's kind of a tricky one because it says that there was no God formed before him, and after Yahweh, there will be no gods formed after him. And that was Isaiah 43:10. Going now to Isaiah 43:15, it says, "I am Yahweh, your Holy One, the Creator of Israel, your King." Going back to Deuteronomy 32:39, it says, "Hear now, I, even I am He, and there is no God," and the word here is Elohim, "with me." So he's saying, okay, here I am. I'm God. I am an Elohim, and there are no other deities with me. It says, "I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. Neither is there any that can deliver out of my hand." God is taking credit for calamities. He's taking credit for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's this idea of there's nothing that is competing against God, no entity competing against him. He's thoroughly in control. What I began to discover through the Hebrew text was the only people, or rather the only entity really competing against God or really acting in a subversive way is humanity. We are the entities that really try to do things our own way, and we keep coming up against this brick wall and hitting our heads on it over and over again. And, according to the Hebrew text, there is this idea that we will eventually get tired of that wall and we'll have enough bruises on our head that we will finally say, what is this worth? At what point do we say that our ways have not worked? Let's try it this prescribed way, written by the hand of God, at least partially in the Torah and codified by Moses. At what point do we try that and give it a whirl to see if it works? So going on, I'm still on page 57. Isaiah 44:24 states, "Thus saith Yahweh, your Redeemer, and he that formed you from the womb. I, Yahweh, that make all things, that stretches forth the heavens alone, that spreads abroad the earth by myself." Again, we find Yahweh being very exclusive. He's taking credit by himself for all these things that he's doing. And then Isaiah 46 verse 5 says, "To whom will you compare me and make me equal, or compare me that we may be alike?" So throughout all these texts, there's this idea that there is, Yahweh singularly, and that he does all of these things by himself. He creates, he judges, and that he leads people where they should go. But he again gives them the choice not to go and to choose a different way, even though it's a harder road, even though it is something that is not beneficial for them. So, as we go along, the other thing that that I talked about was the usage in Hebrew of the word Elohim. And this, for me, was very controversial because I had grown up, hearing, believing, being taught that the word Elohim was always plural, always meant more than one deity. And as I got into the Hebrew and I saw that the word meant more of majestic, and that you had to have, an agreement between subject and verb, and that, the word Elohim, you could have a singular subject and a singular verb, meant that Elohim was singular and not plural. So that was something that was very eye-opening, and I really learned a lot. I felt like I took a lot away from that, and that really kind of began to set the course for the rest of the book, and the foundation for that other things would build on as the study progressed. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead of anyone, so please, if you have any comments, please post. If you have any questions, please feel free to just dig in at any time. Post comments or questions, or if there's something that you have to add. All you guys are researchers, all you guys study, so please feel free to, share what you have learned. And I hope that the sound is still good. And I take it is, because you guys are still here. So I'm just going to continue on until I see questions pop up, and then we'll address those as we go on. So we find that, there's this idea of the singular God, but then we also find that when it refers to God, it's not just singular, but it's the idea of the mighty, of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, just this very powerful, he really dwarfs all gods in the fact that he is the one that's in control, and he is the one that has put this all together. Alexandra says, we can't see page numbers on the versions of the text that we downloaded. Oh, you still couldn't get the book to open on the computer? Okay. All right, Alejandra, I will work with you this week on that, because that is definitely something that we've got to resolve. So I will contact you tomorrow, and I will see what we can do. And I may even give you a call tomorrow afternoon, if that's all right. Or not tomorrow afternoon, I'm sorry, on Sunday. We'll set up a time, and we'll take care of that. So continuing on, we find this idea of, the heavenly court of Yahuveh, because the opposition of the question that is always asked is in Genesis, 1:1 through 1:3, when God says, Elohim said, let us make man in our image, where you have this plural reference. Okay. Martin says, I just learned that myself about Elohim not being plural. Right. And I believe you learned that from the article I sent you this week by Nehemiah, which is a fantastic article, by the way. So is there a book list? Clarify that comment too, Shekel. A book list for reading, or a book list for the books that I used in Yahweh Exist? So yeah, just go ahead and clarify that, so I know exactly what you're asking. But we find that when God says, let us make man in our image, we find that throughout the Tanakh, which would be the Old Testament, we find this concept that God is not alone. He has other beings, other messengers, dignitaries that do his work, that either relay messages to man or carry out specific missions. And the one that that always speaks so strongly to me is the case of Ahab, where you had Micaiah, who you had all these prophets of Baal who prophesied for Ahab to go into battle and to prosper. And everybody, gave kudos to Ahab, even though Israel's king was notoriously oppressive, killed innocent people right, left, and center. Even though this happened, these prophets said, go into battle with Syria and you will prevail. Well, he said, well, I know these guys are saying something that's, really good to my ears. And I feel like they are just doing this to appease me. They're just doing this because they want to be on my good side. And he says, there's a prophet over in Judah, Micaiah, who always prophesies evil against me. I know he is not going to lie, and I know that he is not going to say anything that isn't true. Bring him and let me get his. So we find that Micaiah is brought to Ahab. And when Ahab says, and he specifically says, he says, you know, I adjure you in the name of Yahweh, speak to me that which is right. So Micaiah gives him this scene, whether it was a parable or whether it was some sort of literal vision. It's not really differentiated in the text, but it is said that Micaiah saw the whole host of heaven, and he saw different messengers or spirits come before Yahuveh, and one counseled God on this matter and said, God, let's do this. Or another messenger counseled God in a different matter and gave him counsel and advice on a different matter. So you have all these different people, or not really people, but Melech within this heavenly council, giving God advice on different ways to do things. And you find that one spirit or one Melech comes before God, offers him counsel, and God says, that's it. That will work. Go for it and do it, and you will prevail. And the spirit's mission was to be a lying spirit in the mouth of Ahab's prophets, to make Ahab go into battle, to fall because of the incredible, I mean, it would be like making Hitler or Stalin fall in battle of his own undoing. And, you know, it brought an end to a time of oppression within Israel. So, but you find that God sent these messengers. These messengers did his bidding, and it was actually a very evil mission that they had. It wasn't a pleasant one where it was to bless, it was to bring harm to somebody. But they carried it out in the name of God. And you find that these beings, you know, however we want to classify them, were there with God during this time period. So this is where you find the idea of the Melech and of this heavenly council within you know, the we of the Elohim, the heavenly host that coexists with the Creator. So I am going to go back now and catch some of these questions. And okay, you're talking about a book list, and I'm not sure what book list you are referring to. There is an ebook that I'm working on that I've had some, it looks like there's still some issues with it. I am able to download it on my iPad, and the Zimmermans have it, but they are having trouble downloading it onto their iPad or onto their Kindle. So I'm going to have to work with that and see what the issue is with that file to make sure it can be universally downloaded. And so that's one thing that we're working on. There is a book list in the back of my book that gives you other books you can refer to. The book that we are specifically going off of tonight is the Yahweh Exists book, which is, let me see if I can turn my head here. If I come this way, I think you might can see it on the shelf behind me. So that's what we are covering tonight. Tonight we are going through page 63. And we're just covering the text and going through the particulars and giving you guys an opportunity to ask questions and to bring up different perspectives, or please share anything that you have researched, even if it's different from what I have researched. You know, I think this is a great way to discuss ideas and really learn and grow from each other. Okay, so Tushakal is saying, the one you wrote, I don't have yet. If there are more you are referring to here, can I have the titles? I might be able to find them. Yes, at this point in time, the main book that I am referring to is my book, The Yahweh Exists. The article that I mentioned, Nehemiah's article on Hasatan, let me turn this off real quick. Hasatan is an article that I had sent to Martin. If anybody else is interested in it, let me put my address right here, or my email. You're welcome to email me, and I will forward that article to you. And that way, so anyways, my email is there. If you're wondering why it's there prematurely, it's because I am a minute and a half ahead of you. But that is, if you would like to have that article, just email me and I will send that article to you. Okay, let me go back up here. Okay, Mark says, and the angel of Yahweh appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. Exactly. That is a great example of a messenger of the heavenly host who is part of Yahweh's council, who is an emissary, who is an ambassador, comes in Yahweh's name and appears to humanity, who does God's work, works on God's behalf. What's very interesting in Exodus 3, when you continue through the text, is that even though in the very beginning, Exodus 3:2 specifies that this was an angel that appeared unto Moses, from that point forward, the idea and the fact that this is a separate person or a separate entity from the Creator himself is totally ignored. From that point on, it becomes as though he is Yahweh himself, because he is speaking in the name of his God. He is speaking and carrying out the mission. I often think of it as an ambassador. You know, if Benjamin Netanyahu is going to send his ambassador to America, he's not going to always say, you know, behold, I come, you know, in the name of Israel, or I come in the name of Netanyahu. He is going to speak as though he is speaking for Israel himself. And you find that that is really what a lot of the messengers within the Torah do, that are come and speak with Israel. Okay, let me catch some more of these comments. Okay, I knew you were working on that one still. That's okay. I didn't know there were others should be reading. Okay, yeah, no, the only book that we are reading to Shekel really is the Yahweh Exists. That's the only thing that we're covering in this class or in this book club. Eventually we will get to volume 2. I haven't released that one yet, but that's on down the road. And then I do have another article on chronology that I will be releasing, hopefully September or October. I'll be releasing that. So, okay, Ken and Joy said, I had a question about the end of last week's reading, where you wrote on the top of page 46, so let me get there, about Yahweh neither sleeps nor slumbers. Those two words, sleep and slumber, mean different things. Sleep and death. They do, but remember that a lot of the Hebrew that you have in Torah is poetic. So that when it says Yahweh neither sleep nor slumbers, it's really a poetic way of saying the same thing, but in two different ways to convey an idea, to convey a message. And the idea that God neither sleeps nor slumbers, from what I have read, is the idea that God doesn't need rest. He doesn't need sleep the way that humanity does. And he's perfectly capable of taking care of business. You know, you do find within Torah, especially in Deuteronomy 32, the idea that God would hide his face from the house of Israel, and that he would allow them to receive the consequences of their ways, whether it be for good or for evil. So you have this idea of the hiding of the face, but not of the idea of him, you know, physically needing to sleep. Oh, and 2 shekel, please don't worry about it. You are fine. Please repeat yourself as many times as it's needed for us to cover the point and to answer the questions. Yeah, the lag time is an issue. And, you know, if we find that the lag time is a hindrance, we can always go back to anytime meeting. So that's the neat thing that we have with this. And I am really ultimately going to leave this vote up to you guys, because this is a class for you, and this is something that it needs to be beneficial, that y'all can get something out of. Okay, so Ken and Joy, they clarified their point, and they said, I was thinking that sleep, death, means he cannot die. Excellent, excellent point. That is exactly right. If Yahweh does not sleep, he does not slumber, he does not die. He's not capable of dying. So yeah, God does not die. I think, what was it, that movie, God is not dead? Um, and that is an excellent point to make. So then when you look at contemporary religious beliefs, either modern or anciently, the idea of God dying would be an idea that would go against and oppose Torah, where God, as you said, never sleeps nor slumbers. He is the creator, and he has a power that is self-sustaining through the generations. One of the questions that I posed in my book was that it almost appears that the idolatry that Israel and all nations eventually kind of imbibed, that became very popular, it's almost as if this foundation really developed out of the history that occurred before the flood. And I found that absolutely fascinating, that you would have something that was utterly destroyed in the flood be carried through, say, by people in the ark, the descendants of Noah, just his sons and daughters-in-law inside the ark, that they would want to honor their ancestors, want to keep alive their memories that had been destroyed. So I found that to be something that was really changed my perspective in how I approached and saw, those 4 doctrines that we looked at last week, and saw how those continued after the flood and really developed into their own religious forms throughout the various nations. Okay, Kim says the article, not the book. Okay. Now, are you referring to the article that Nehemiah wrote? The article that Nehemiah wrote is one that you can email me for, and I'm going to put my email address here, which I think most of you guys have. If you would like the Nehemiah article, just email me for the Nehemiah article, and I'll send it to you. I'm going to type that in real quick. So, okay, and Lincoln and Joyce said, I meant sleep meaning death, as in the Bible uses sleep to mean someone's sleep. And that, again, is an excellent point, Ken and Joe, is that if God neither sleeps nor slumbers, and you are absolutely correct, so many times throughout the Hebrew text, it refers to someone sleeping, and I think it is Proverbs and Ecclesiastes talk about sleeping the death, and there is this idea that you're neither awake nor alive, but you're simply sleeping when you die. So if God does not sleep, he does not die, because sleep is a kind of more of a euphemism for death throughout the Hebrew scriptures. And as a matter of fact, death is considered a form of sleep. So there's a lot of parallels in the Hebrew text. Any other questions? I'm going to go at this very slowly because I know we had kind of a tricky start, but I do want to keep this within about 9:30 or so. We might go over a couple minutes tonight, but I don't want to go over too much. Next week, we are going to be covering, and let me give you the pages. Next week, we do get into some more, I think, particular material, because we're getting into the covenants. And this, I really encourage, as we go into the covenants, to spend a lot of time in these, to really study them. As you go through these tables, and there are a lot of tables, but as you go through these tables, take your time to read them and highlight them. Maybe one thing you could do, this is just an idea, is go through the tables and highlight in different colors what is the same in every single covenant. So in other words, if we start with the Promised Land covenant, highlight in every single covenant in each table where that promise is again. And that way you can see color-codedly how these promises are given in one covenant, and they continue on and they're reaffirmed in every single covenant. And I think that really helps to strengthen and to see the pattern that exists. So for next time, we are going to cover a little bit more, and I think we're going to go through the through page. Let's see, that's going to be a little much. Let's go through the. Hold on, I'm just looking at what would be a good page divide, and if you guys have any ideas. I was a little bit busy this week, and I was planning on sitting down and dividing this up, but it just didn't happen. How does the saying go? The best laid plans, you know. Okay, let's go through the circumcision covenant. Actually, let's go through the Sarai covenant. So let's go through page 98. So this is going to go a lot. We're going to cover a whole lot more this week. And if you guys have trouble with this amount of pages, because this is actually going to be 65, this is going to be about 30 pages, a little over 30 pages is what we're going to cover this week. So for next week, and I'll put this here, we will cover pages 65 to 98 with the rewrite this in the chapter 3 on covenants. So we'll do that for next week, and again, highlight whatever cross-referencing you need to do to get the concepts to stick or to see the patterns of the covenants. Because what's going to be fascinating as we come into Israel's national covenant, once you have this understanding of exactly what was promised, of exactly what the stipulations and the promises were, you're going to see all of those stipulations, all of those promises, every single precept and idea that is laid down in the patriarchal covenants is going to come back again in the national covenant at Sinai and again in Deuteronomy. So you find that in every single case, every single covenant is upheld. Every single covenant is reiterated. Never once do we find that any covenant is ever rescinded at any point in time throughout Israel's history. Martin says, there are a lot of charts, so I think that that is a fair reading assignment. Okay, great. Fantastic, Martin. And again, if we need to slow down, we can, but I would like to do something that is a little bit substantive so that we can make progress. And just to give you guys kind of a little bit of an outlook, we will have class next week on actually, no, let me revise this, because next weekend is Labor Day, I believe. Hold on, let me look at this. So Friday is the 4th. So next week, we will skip next week because we are taking every 3rd or 4th Friday off. And next week, people will probably more than likely be having plans for the Labor Day weekend. So we will skip next week. Then we will do, and I am going to post this schedule. I'll post this both on Facebook and on the UIL list if you guys are on the UIW list. And then we will go for the 11th and 18th. But then we're going to take a 2-week break for those that celebrate Sukkot, and then we'll come back again in October. So September is kind of going to be an abbreviated month. So if you find that chapter 3 takes a little bit of time to get through, you're actually going to have about a month to get through the entire chapter. So don't feel discouraged that life happens and you get busy one week and you don't make as much progress. So we will have time to do that. All right. Kim says, I don't see any comments or you're typing. That's why I suggest the UI list. Then others will get it too. Okay, yes, I definitely will. And I am going to see what is going on as to why you cannot see the dialogue. Oh, the UI list is the United Israel. I'm going to type this here. United Israel World Union list. And let's see, I will put, email me and I will send you a link. And that way, if you want to get, and the UI list is the United Israel World Union list. There are a group of us that get together every year in Charlotte, and we have an incredible get together. We really enjoy the time that we have together. Very scholars come, they speak, and it's a very informative meeting gathering that we have. Betty says, can you post any pertinent information on the dialogue list as well? I certainly can. I did talk with Ross, and Ross has been very, very busy with work. He's been putting horrendous hours, 60, 80, sometimes more hours or more a week, and he has temporarily shut down the dialogue list. So that's why you don't really see anything coming in that for now. I think once his schedule lightens up and once he has more time, he may then be able to go back and start it up again. But he just wanted to shut it down for now. But I will post on the UI list, and I will also put it on Facebook as well as the Yahweh Exists page. So you'll have both of those. Oh, Kim, I'm so glad that you guys enjoy this, and I love your questions. I love your comments because it keeps me on my toes, and you guys help me think of things that maybe I missed or things that you approach it from a different perspective. So again, what I'm going to be doing with this class is I'm going to be pulling all of you guys' questions, all of the ideas that you have and comments. I'm going to be pulling it into a workbook that churches and that communities can use to go through this in a group setting, or even in some sort of personal study session, so that they can benefit from it and grow from it. Chloe says, my copy of the book has not arrived yet. It was ordered earlier this week. How do I access any online text? I usually join group via YouTube. I don't really have an online test yet. The Zimmermans bought an online book that I have been working with someone to create, but they had a hard time accessing it. So I am not going to be selling any more of those until I work out the issues with that particular format and see why it is not working. Again, it worked for me. I didn't have any problems with it, but I've got to make sure that it works for everyone else. And that is something that we are trying to work through, hopefully quickly this week. It's been kind of a rough 2 weeks for me with a lot of things that I've had going on, but the next 2 weeks look kind of open, so I hope to really get a lot accomplished in the next 2 weeks. And yes, Joanne, I can't wait for April either. It's going to be very, very nice. And yeah, I'm so glad that you all could be here tonight, that we could, just fellowship together, and that we could interact and ask questions. And please, if you think of a question later, don't think that just because we moved on to new material that you can't ask a question from a previous chapter. Or if your book comes in later after we've covered a material, either email me, you can always message me on Facebook. But please, if you have a question, or if something doesn't make sense to you, or if something is new to you that you're having trouble working through, please reach out. Ask. How does it go? The only question that isn't worth asking is the one that goes unasked. So you really just put it into words and jump right in. I really invite all of you guys to do that. And who knows, you guys may help me put a really good question in the workbook that I hadn't thought of. So yes, absolutely, you are not alone in this. This is something, I think the hardest thing in this journey that I think a lot of us have found is that this accountability and this seeking of truth, it does often make you alone, but you come to love the accountability because you see the effect. You see the blessing that it produces in your own life and as well as for society in general and as a whole. And I think that is just so rewarding. So, okay, 2 shekels. So, okay. Yeah. Again, I will let you know as soon as I have the digital format ready. I'm hoping to have that later this week, but I can't make any promises because it does depend more or less on my schedule, which is very, very full right now. So, okay, Chloe says, okay, so I should be able to join you through the YouTube, or do I need to connect to you through the UI list? You can connect with me on YouTube, and I think Google Plus allows you to leave comments. So I will check those comments. But the best way, again, to get in contact with me is either Facebook or email me directly. Those are generally the two most reliable sources. Google Plus does allow texting, and I think YouTube also allows you to ask questions. So you're free to use any of those formats. I mean, they're all publicly available. But as far as what I have found to be very reliable has been the Facebook and the direct email. So okay, so it is fantastic getting together with you guys. And for those that are interested, you're welcome to email me again for information on Sukkot. Sukkot this year will be from September 27th through October 5th. We do have a rather large gathering. James Tabor, Ross Nichols, David Tyler, myself, and quite a few other people will be speaking during Sukkot this year. So if you guys are interested in coming, let me know. Also on Facebook, there is a group that email me, and I'll give you some more information on that as well. So I look forward to seeing you guys again. Again, it will be in 2 weeks because next week is Labor Day, and we are going to take off for Labor Day since a lot of people will be out of town. And we'll come back in 2 weeks. So I will be posting a schedule, both a meeting schedule as well as a reading schedule. And that way, if you guys want to read ahead or you kind of want a plan, something you can look forward to, it's all there laid out and it's easy to follow. So I am so glad that you guys joined me. And if you will join in tomorrow morning, we'll be on Roots of Faith at 10:30 tomorrow morning. That's also here on YouTube. And I look forward to seeing each of y'all tomorrow morning. I've enjoyed the fellowship. I've loved your questions. And I will just look forward to fellowshipping with you guys tomorrow. Keep the fun going another day. Okay, so you'll already be in Colorado, 2 shekel. All right. Yeah, well, for next year, you know, if it's not in Jerusalem, as the saying goes, we will be posting some information on that for next year. So, all right, guys. Well, it has been wonderful spending time with you guys. I'm going to log off and go give my little ones a hug. And, oh, no patience at all. I love this. And it is a learning curve, actually, on my part for the dialogue. So what I'm learning to do with the whole, not the dialogue, but the chat, is I keep talking for a minute and a half. So if it ever sounds like I'm rambling on a subject, I'm just waiting for you guys to hear what I've said, the intent of what I'm saying, so that I can